Linda had spent 30 years managing a small grocery store in a quiet Ohio town. At 55, she was the backbone of the place. Kay knew every customer by name, kept the shelves stocked, and even stayed late to balance the books. But one rainy Tuesday, the new corporate owners called her into a meeting. "We're letting you go," they said, handing her a measly severance check. No explanation, no thank you, just a cold goodbye after decades of loyalty. She walked home that day, her umbrella forgotten, rain soaking through her coat, feeling like her life was over. But Linda didn't crumble. That night, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and a stack of old notebooks. They were filled with ideas she'd scribbled over the years, recipes from customers, little tricks to keep produce fresh, ways to make the store feel like home. She'd suggested them to her bosses, but they'd always brushed her off. Too old-fashioned, they'd said. Now, with nothing left to lose, she decided to stop waiting for permission. She pulled out her savings, $10,000, every penny she'd scraped together, and bet it all on herself. She started small. The next week, she rented a booth at the local farmer's market. She baked her grandmother's cinnamon bread, the kind customers used to beg for at the store, and sold it alongside jars of homemade jam. Word spread fast. By the end of the month, she was selling out before noon. People didn't just buy her goods, they lingered, sharing stories, asking for advice. Linda realized something: they didn't just miss her food, they missed her. She wasn't just a cashier to them, she was a friend. That's when the idea hit her: she'd build something better than the store that dumped her. With her earnings, she leased a tiny shop downtown. She called it Linda's Corner, a cozy spot with wooden tables, warm lighting, and the smell of fresh bread. She didn't stop at baked goods. She added a coffee counter, a little shelf of local crafts, and a board where people could pin up community notices. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like home, a place the big chain could never replicate. Within 6 months, she had lines out the door. Customers came from neighboring towns, drawn by the buzz about the woman who'd turned heartbreak into something special. The old grocery store noticed. Sales dropped as people flocked to Linda's instead. One day, the same manager who'd fired her showed up, hat in hand, offering her old job back. She laughed. "I don't need you anymore," she said, handing him a free loaf of bread as he left. By her 56th birthday, Linda's Corner was pulling in more money than she'd ever dreamed, enough to open a second location. She hired locals who'd been overlooked, just like her, and trained them with the patience she'd honed over decades. The real turning point came a year later. A food blogger stumbled into her shop, wrote a glowing review, and suddenly Linda's story was everywhere. People loved the tale of the 55-year-old who'd been tossed aside and built an empire from scratch. Offers poured in: partnerships, wholesale deals, even a TV spot. She said no to most of it. "I'm not here to get rich," she told a friend. "I'm here to prove I'm still worth something." But the money came anyway. By 58, her 2 shops and a small online store were netting her over $1 million. Linda didn't move to a mansion or buy a fancy car. She stayed in her little house, though she did fix the leaky roof and add a porch swing. She set aside college funds for her grandkids and donated to a shelter for women starting over. The rest went back into the business: more hires, better ingredients, a 3rd shop. She became a quiet legend in her town, the woman who turned a pink slip into a paycheck. Customers still stop by just to chat, and she listens, her hands dusted with flour, her smile steady. Now 60, Linda looks back on that rainy day with a grin. "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me," she says. "It made me see what I could do." Her shops are thriving, but more than that. She's thriving, proof that 55 isn't the end, but a chance to start something bigger. Her story whispers to every woman who's felt discarded: you're not done yet. Not by a long shot.